A Pup Named Scooby Doo was the latest Scooby Doo iteration in 1988 and went through 1991, having 3 seasons. I, of course, being born in the early 2000s, was not there for that, but my parents did buy me a DVD of season 1, which I watched on repeat non-stop. So today I'm here to tell you why this is my favorite iteration of Scooby Doo. To start us off with some context, everyone in the Mystery Gang is a kid, and Scooby-Doo is a puppy, meaning they're like elementary school age, and they run the Scooby-Doo Detective Agency out of their treehouse and charge 25 cents a day for their mystery cases. With the gang not being teenagers anymore and being kids, it adds such a naive and childlike worldview into these characters. And really, they don't have to deal with any other, high school problems. The only problems that they deal with is whatever monster they're trying to unmask that episode. Of course, the characters when they are teenagers are stereotypes, but now that they're kids, they're extremely over-exaggerated stereotypes that the writers have lots of fun with, pushing these stereotypes to their extremes and just having some of the best comedy Scooby-Doo has ever produced. And let's talk about those characters, shall we? Starting with Scooby and Shaggy. This is probably the closest I've ever seen these two characters. It's literally a boy and his puppy. Of course they're going to be close. So much so, in fact, I really don't think Shaggy has a one-on-one conversation with anyone else in the Mystery Gang. If he's having a one-on-one conversation, it's going to be to Scooby. And this doesn't completely alienate them, as the writers do a good job of still incorporating Shaggy with the main group of human friends, but of course his number one at the end of the day is going to be Scooby. Shaggy, just like any little boy, loves comic books and pizza, and that's really his only 2 character traits besides being scared of whatever monster they're dealing with right now. He believes in ghosts and monsters and all that stuff, and he sometimes just would rather hide and eat a pizza with his boy Scooby than try and solve a case. And the one time he does want to solve a case is when the monster steals his comic book and he wants to get it back. So I thought that was a fun episode. Then there is Freddy, who is so much different than any other Freddy that I have seen. Basically, he is just a crazy conspiracy theorist. He reads from a newspaper called The Daily Exaggerator and basically believes every scheme is run by aliens or mole people or the town bully Red Herring. Yes, there is a character with the first name Red, last name Herring, and it is so funny. Him and Freddy have such a fun dynamic because every episode Freddy blames it on Red Herring and he's like, "No, you doofus, it's not me," and he bullies Freddy, and it's just so funny how Freddy pulls this character into every episode. And yes, he's a little stupid, he goes on crazy conspiracy tangents, but at the same time he's still brave and confident and ready to face any monster that may be in his way.
Come on, Red Herring, give yourself up, we know you're in there. Hey, what's the big idea? Admit it, you're the one that scared Scooby. What are you talking about? We know it was you. Why else would you be up at 1 in the morning? 'Cause you woke me up, you doofus.
Then there's Daphne, who's just a very stereotypical girl. She likes shopping and hates getting dirty, basically, but at the same time she's super, super rich. Of course, she's been rich in other iterations of this character, but there's an episode set in her mansion, which we'll talk about later, but it is huge. There's a whole underground subway station, and there's basically an entire supermarket for the pantry. Everything's just so over the top with her wealth and money, and she's a great character to basically balance everybody out. When Shaggy's scared, she says, "Hey, there's no such thing as monsters." When Freddy's going on a crazy conspiracy theory, she really puts him in his place, and she basically balances out the whole team. Then there's Velma, which again is actually very different than any other rendition of Velma that I've seen, basically where she doesn't talk. She's silent 99% of these episodes. She only talks when there's a clue or she knows who did it. Basically, it'll be 10 minutes into the episode and then Velma says her first line, "Jinkies." Everyone responds with, "Velma said Jinkies." That means there must be a clue. Velma explains the clue, and then we move on with the episode until the monster is caught. Velma is always the person to figure out who it is because she carries around this giant computer and takes notes on it, and then when it is unmasked, she really reveals the plan behind the person, and then the person's like, yeah, Velma, you got that right. I was going to do that thing. And really, she's the brains of the group, but also very quiet, and basically all the other characters carry the dialogue in this show.
Jinkies. Ahem. Jinkies. I said jinkies. Oops.
A Pup Named Scooby Doo does what cartoons these days don't really do anymore, and that is fully embrace the cartoon medium. They're not afraid for eyes to pop out of heads or for the characters to be floating on air, then look down, look back up, and fall. All of those classic cartoon gags are there, and they don't need to bring attention to it, because I feel like if in today's world, if there's some big exaggerated joke of like somebody like falling flat on the ground and then like popping back up, someone would have to go like, so that just happened. But no, it's just fully embraced in the reality of this world. None of the cartoonishness is questioned. It is played along like this is the regular world and we don't need to bring attention to it. This is just things that happen. Scooby-Doo can fully transform his body into a rocket ship and blast off, because why not? It doesn't need attention brought to it of it being weird and out of this world, because it's actually in this world. That's okay that it can happen, and they just accept the fact and continue on. What really helps these cartoonish slapstick jokes is the fourth wall breaking nature of the show, because at the end of each episode, Velma looks at the camera and says, "Do you know who did it?" as she goes over each of the suspects, and then you as a little kid at home can pick what suspect you think is the monster. And that's really cool, sort of Dora the Explorer, but only at one point in the show. There are some other like sort of fourth wall breaking jokes, but the extent of it is basically Red Herring going, "I'm not in this episode, you can't blame it on me," or something like that. And it's not nothing crazy, but they are sort of aware that they're in this cartoonish world situation, and they accept it, and they just move on with their lives as it should be. One of my favorite running bits in the entire show is how the characters can just talk to someone on TV as if it were just like a FaceTime or something. Like they'll be hanging out in the living room, and then the breaking news will come on. The news reporter says whatever he needs to say, and then they turn to the news reporter and just have a full-on one-on-one conversation with him. And it's so funny every time a character inside a TV addresses someone watching the TV, because that's not how TVs work. That joke gets me every time, and I love it.
And that's the news for tonight.
I guess it's bedtime.
Wait! Don't touch that dial. We have a special news bulletin.
From the character design to the set design to the sound effects to the just beautifully written dialogue and jokes that don't treat the audience like they're babies, but jokes that are actually smart and can get a 20-year-old like me laughing to this day. It's just amazing. Because somewhere in the 2010s, I think with Adventure Time and Mystery Inc. and Gravity Falls, cartoons sort of felt this trend of like having an underlying story throughout the entire thing, and there being this conspiracy theory, and it's great. I love all three of those shows, and I'm not bashing on them, but I think sometimes it's nice just to go back to the slapstick origins of cartoons and fully embrace that sort of genre with it, to where you just get jokes out of it, you watch it, have a good time, laugh so hard, and then just move on. There doesn't always need to be some overarching story to get enjoyment out of something. And I think another part of it too is in those 2010s, we as a society became really like wanting realistic things. Like every superhero iteration had to be realistic, every cartoon has to be realistic, because if God forbid you disobey one of Newton's laws of gravity, you'll get a cinema sin and then everyone will hate you. It's like, no, just do what you want, embrace the genre that you're in and what you're going for, and fully commit to just doing something out there and crazy like a Pup Named Scooby Doo does. But I will say is that this has the best music of any Scooby Doo iteration ever. There is an original song in each episode. During the chase scene, it'll have a song that's specific to the monster. All of them sort of sound similar, but that's okay because all of them go so hard. Even the music that plays in the background of like establishing shots or just them walking around is so good. It's just these vocals of like this chorus, and I'll play a clip of it, but it's just amazing. My biggest problem with the show as a whole is that most of the monsters and plots revolve around wanting land. Like, I want this property, so I'm going to scare everyone else away from it so I can either demolish it and build a mall, or scare everyone away so I can get the hidden treasure there. That's a lot of the monsters' goals, but there are some villains that have really weird, sort of more adult motivations. Like, the first episode is about counterfeit money and the monster wanting to print counterfeit money, and then one of the episodes is about a monster, or the person who dresses up as a monster, who steals dolphins and then uses the dolphins to smuggle drugs.
These pouches must be used to carry something. Jinkies! It's drugs!
Drugs? Look!
I will say that even though the villain's sort of motivations can be similar at points, the locations are very different, and it's so fun to explore each location in each episode. There are episodes that take place at a beach, a ski resort, a mall, Comic-Con, the Scooby Snack Factory, a museum, a TV station, and a Native American reservation, which that episode nowadays is questionable. But anyway, all of these locations are very different and just makes it so it's not repetitive, even though the Scooby-Doo formula is repetitive. The different monsters and locations and the different characters we meet in those locations keep it fresh. So now, just to close it out, I'll be talking about my favorite episodes, and hopefully I've convinced you to watch this show because it's awesome. Here's the point where I have to admit that I've only seen season 1, actually, because I thought as a kid I watched the whole thing, but apparently going back, I've only had the season 1 DVD, so these are all just season 1 episodes, and maybe a day in the future I'll make a video about seasons 2 and 3. So in no particular order, here are my favorite episodes. Starting off with Scooby Doo. This is the one that takes place at the beach and has dolphin drug smuggling. Basically, Velma's aunt works at this like aquarium, like nature reservation sort of thing, and they meet the dolphins, and then the dolphins keep going missing, and Velma's aunt is like, I have no idea what's going on. And then the monster is actually a skateboarder, like a headless skateboarder. It's like the Headless Horseman, but he's on a skateboard because he has a pumpkin for a head and he rides a skateboard. And they go to like this skateboarding arena thing that I really wanted to be real as a kid. I didn't even skateboard as a kid, but this location made me want to start skateboarding just because it looked so cool. And yeah, so it ends up he's using the dolphins to smuggle drugs, which is crazy. Then there's the episode RoboPup, which takes place in Daphne's mansion entirely. And Daphne's mansion is huge, and so you can really get to explore each area of it. Daphne's parents have a security guard, and the security guard has a robot dog named RoboPup, and the whole episode it's Scooby competing against RoboPup to see who can solve this mystery first, as all the furniture in Daphne's room has been stolen. The ghost in this episode is a chef named Pierre Goulash, and the song about him during the chase scene might be one of my favorite songs of the entire series. It's so catchy, and he says "Sacre bleu" because he's French, and I think that is funny. My next favorite episode is The Story Stick, which is the one that takes place on an indigenous reservation. Of course, in the show they just say Indians, but I think I just liked this a lot as a kid because I liked the design of the monster. It's a totem pole monster, and this made me want to get a totem pole as a kid just because I was fascinated with the aesthetics of indigenous culture. But now I know not to appropriate it, and I can respectfully just learn about their culture and history. The next episode is probably the episode I've seen the most because it's just really burned in my mind. It's called Ghost Who's Coming to Dinner, which is really weird because there is an actual ghost in this episode. It is a real full-on specter, float through walls kind of ghost, and his name is Mr. Boo, and basically the house he lives in is going to get torn down, and the rules of being a ghost are if your house gets torn down, then you poof, cease to exist. And so the detective agency helps Mr. Boo in solving who was ever trying to get everyone out of the house and destroy the thing and get the thing. This episode just really stands out because for once there is a real ghost, and Daphne is proved wrong. Aside from that, I just want to mention that my favorite monster of the entire season is called Al Capone, and he is a Al Capone parody of like a 1920s gangster, and he just says blah, shay, blah, and I laugh every single time, and I love him so much. In conclusion, you know those shows from your childhood which you're scared to revisit because what if they don't hold up, and if you rewatch it and it's bad, it ruins all your memories of it? Well, this is not one of those cases. It holds up so well, and watching this show has become a Halloween tradition for me in the past few years, and I love rewatching it as I'm older and really understanding all these jokes and laughing at it. I laugh every single time, no matter how many times I've seen these episodes, so I strongly recommend you guys go watch A Pup Named Scooby Doo if you haven't, and if you have, maybe go revisit it because it's still amazing today. That's the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.